So a lot of items got considerable glow-ups in 2024, and that includes the net, which has caught my attention because I have been using a net on my monk build, which I'm playing in a campaign, and which I took into my most recent attempt at the Gauntlet, the stress test run by my friend over at CMCC Builds. So that video should be coming out here pretty soon. You can see how effective my monk is and how effectively he employs a net. Anyway, I've been so impressed with it that I thought it would be worth a deep dive into the net to see if the net is right for you and your PC. If you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe, and let's jump right in. So the net is much improved over the 2014 version, which clogged the attack action. As you can see by the description I put up on the screen, it specified that if you took an attack with a net, you couldn't make any other attacks regardless of how many attacks you normally have. And so that really made it only appropriate for Battle Masters with Quick Toss, but now it's more available to other classes and is really good. In 2024, it can only be deployed as part of the attack action, in which it replaces one of your attacks. So it can't be used as a bonus action or a reaction, as you could in 2014. And you must have a net in hand to deploy it, right? Either to start your turn or using your interact with object to draw it and get it ready, because you can't use it as part of the attack, the draw stow thing that you get as part of the attack action, because you're not making an attack. Plus, it's equipment and not a weapon, and so you can't draw or stow it. You're going to have to manage having one in your hand and using your interact with object perhaps to get it ready. And you cannot use multiple nets. It specifies that it replaces one of your attacks in each turn. And this does line up with the 2014 version, which was usable only once per turn. But I will say it is not ironclad wording. So some DMs might interpret it as saying, yeah, you actually can attack with multiple nets in one turn. But that said, you're still going to have issues deploying it because of the whole interact with object and inability to draw and stow it. You're going to have to start with a net in hand or use your interact with object, and that can be clunky. It might be possible to proc it with your nick attack, right? When you have a weapon with a light property and the nick property, you can make a second attack with it on your attack action, and that might be sufficient to substitute as your net attack. The arguments for and against this are complex. They get a little bit esoteric by invoking specific beats general, and not everyone agrees. It does say the nick attack must be made with a different light weapon. That could be the general rule, might be a specific rule, kind of depends on the interpretation of the DM. And then the net says it replaces one of your attacks, and that is definitely a specific rule. So it's up in the air whether you can or not. If the DM says that you can, you are still going to have to juggle the weapons, because I think you would probably have to have the nick weapon in hand in order to proc the attack that you are then going to substitute for the net. But honestly, I don't suspect that most DMs are going to go for that. Probably comes off as unbalanced, and they might honestly interpret the wording differently. So make sure you ask, but it might be possible to replace that nick attack with the net attack. And you can theoretically offload the net attack to a minion that has an attack. The DM might object if the anatomy is questionable, like if it's a horse or something, or a mastiff, but if they're cool with it, a mastiff might actually be a good option because it has a Dex 14, it would have an attack, they're cheap, and who doesn't want to bring a dog onto the field, right? Dogs are fun. So that might be cool to offload it, ask your DM. You can only attack creatures that you can see, unlike in the 2014 version, which was an actual attack, and so therefore you were able to target it to creatures that you couldn't see just at disadvantage, but now you can't. And that does line up with the general case that attack actions work against things that you can't see and saving throws don't, so that's cool. Combo with blind sight. You could get blind sight in a couple of different ways in this game, but you definitely want to be able to see the creature if you're going to want to deploy nets. You cannot deploy it against huge or gargantuan creatures. That's the same as in 2014. But interestingly, it is no longer ineffective against targets that are formless. So swarms, oozes, certain things are eligible targets now, rules as written. So a slight buff, we'll take it. It forces a dex save using the PC's dex mod, to set the save DC. No longer an attack roll, especially no longer an attack roll at disadvantage if they were 10 feet or further away, as in 2014. And so, obviously not appropriate for PCs that have dumped decks, but if you've got a decent dex of 14 or better, it seems like it would be a good option. And it does force a save. So it can be an excellent option if the enemy is defended against attacks in some way, like mirror image, or they're dodging, or your PC is restrained, etc. The enemy dex save can be impaired if you want to combo with the net attack. For example, stunned is an auto fail versus dex and strength saves. Restrained is disadvantage against dex saves, and even though the net also confers restrainment, you might want to double restrain things sometimes. That would extend the duration. If you're using telekinesis or something, it ends at like the end of the caster's turn, so you get the net on them. They're going to continue to be restrained, and if you double restrain them, it might force the loss of multiple actions or attacks, so that can be good. In any case, you can debuff them on their dex save and combo with the net. It has a range of 15 feet, which is solid for skirmishers and kiters, even against 10-foot reach. That's still not going to get you within range of a reaction attack or an opportunity attack if you leave that reach. So the 2014 version had bad range. This one has much better range. That's very cool. It's easy to escape and destroy, which is just like in 2014, but it does consume an action or an attack to do it, so that's really good. And it did get a little bit of a nerf. It's now an action for a DC 10 athletics check to escape, whereas in 2014 it was a strength check, so a little bit of a nerf there. And it's easy to destroy. It's an attack versus AC 10 to do only 5 damage, and the attack will be at disadvantage, but 10's a pretty easy target. And a bit of a nerf here, significant one actually. 2014, it was only slashing damage that could break a net. Now it's any damage that is not bludgeoning, poison, or psychic, so quite a nerf there, but it's still good. If your enemy is carrying a mace or something and you've ascertained that they only do bludgeoning damage, then that's going to be more effective against them. Even if they can do slashing or whatever, it's fine because they're going to have to use an attack to do it, and that is a nice measure of control. Plus you get the benefit of restrained for all of its preceding turns, so your allies are going to be able to attack it restrained and get bonuses for that. The net in 2024 has great synergies with monks. Like I said, I'm playing it with a monk character, and I think that class in particular can take advantage of the net. It's a dex-based class, so the save DC is going to be good. You have Flurry of Blows, which offers a lot of attacks on your bonus action, up to 3 once you get to 10th level, to attack the restrained creature. And it's a nice combo with Stunning Strike, because Stun automatically fails your dex and strength saves, so you can get the net on them, and since the stun now ends at the start of your next turn, and you can't keep your attacks at advantage going, once you get the net on them, you can. They'll come out of stun, they'll still be restrained, you'll still get your attacks at advantage, you can maybe stun them again. I think it's a solid option for casters, because they typically have a weak attack that, a cantrip that they use once they get their big spell down or concentration spell down. Instead, they could use a net. Casters usually have like a dex of 14, so they shouldn't be too bad at applying it, and it can be a very powerful control option that doesn't consume a spell slot. That's really valuable. And I think it's a solid option for classes with minions that get an attack and normally do little damage, like a Chain Pact Warlock or a Beastmaster Ranger. The Mastiff might be a sneaky option, because anyone can get a Mastiff, and they're cheap, and they have an attack, and they have a dex of 14. So, maybe the DM would have to sign off, and it might be a tough sell to get them to say, well, yeah, Mastiff can throw a net. Rules as written, they can do it, so that might be an option. Can't hurt to ask. And finally, note that it might be the case that you cannot teleport out of a net in 2024, because the teleportation rules say that all the equipment you're wearing and carrying teleports with you. And personally, I find it hard to make the argument that you're not wearing or carrying a net once you're wrapped up into it. So ask your DM, it's up to him, but maybe it's kind of like Everett's Black Tentacles. You teleport out of it, you're still restrained. So same thing with a net, I would say. So that is how a net works and how I think it can be applied in Dungeons & Dragons. It's working really, really great for me on my monk build, and it might be great for your build too. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and regardless, thank you so much for watching. This has been Build Bronze & Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Brown Bafflestone. See you next time!